Hello, welcome back to Expert Street. I'm Greg. So today what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to do your first part of laying track. But first of all, what I'm going to be doing first is putting some cork down on the baseboard, which also acts as a bit of a buffer, takes some sound out of the trains going along the track, but also then allows you, when you glue the ballast, you're not really destroying the baseboards or anything. So what I'm working on here is Gordon's Lane. It's only going to be 1 foot wide, but it's going to be built as a oval or an end to end. So with what I'm going to be doing first is I've bought some cork sheeting, which I've got here, which are roughly around about 2 foot by 3 foot lengths. And what I've been doing this morning is cutting some of them up into 1 foot by 2 foot sections. So when I start gluing them down, I can glue them down quite easily, and it means then I can overlap onto the baseboards. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how I cut these, because obviously there's different ways that you can cut them. I tend to use a knife, but what I'm going to be doing here is all I do is I get the 1 foot, 2 foot edge on the side. I measure it. I hold it roughly where I want it to go in place. Now, the reason why I'm doing it this way and not doing it the long ways is because you've got a decent cut here, which basically means that when you do join them up, you've got the already nice decent cut down that side there. So it means when you butt up, you can't see where the joints are. Now, to get this really nice and everything, all I do is I just sit there, and then all I do is I just pinch the corner along it. Now, sometimes it can move, and it can but it's not too much, just so it just breaks the cork a little bit. And then, as you can see, I've already got the Stanley knife ready. So all I'm going to do now is just slightly pull the cork away from the baseboard so it's not laying down flat. And you can get different types. I know friends of mine have used cork sheeting, cork tiling. And some people have used some Scenecraft track bed. I've always used a mixture of both. So when it comes to Gordon's Lane along the main part of the section, which I'll show you in a second or two, what I've done with that, so there's one sheet. So what I've done with that, they're using the Tim Horn baseboards, using the picture frame style. So what I'm going to be doing with that is I don't want to put cork all the way down, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be raising the track bed. So I'm going to be laying cork over everything along the base of it, and then I'm going to be doing another layer of cork, gradually building it up. So we've got a bit of a shoulder and a bit of a bank. I'm going to really go to town on Gordon's Lane. Obviously Ebsworth Street was a really quick project. Within the first couple of years it was basically transformed on. So I'm just going to finish off cutting this last one, and there we go. So now I've got a few more left to cut. So what I've done here, I've placed the points on just roughly where they're going to be going, just so that I know, because obviously where the baseboards have got cross beams, I want to make sure that when I do fit the point motors, I'm not going to be hitting any of them. So I was quite lucky enough to purchase these 2 sets of them, both off a PC Recycler off of eBay, which are great. So it means that you can then obviously save a lot of point space, and yes, they're expensive, but they're pretty good for exhibition layouts or home layouts that you haven't got much space. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be using the centre cross beam at the front. So this board that I'm working on at the moment will be a 3 foot by 1 foot board. So this is going to have all the point work on and the panel. Now, the panel's roughly around about 6 inches. So I know I haven't got 6 inches either side, so I've got to be very clever on how I do this. So I may have to build the panel at an angle and then run the wires down through underneath, or I may build the panel on top as like a fold out section. I haven't quite worked out what I'm going to do yet until I actually get them or finish building them. Then I won't be able to do anything. So on this part of the layout, this is going to be an up and a down line. and then the curves will go around once Tim has obviously finished making them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little bit of a time lapse so you can actually see me laying all the cork down, and then once I get back to the track, then I will come back to you and then roughly go through how I work out where things are going to go and how I'm going to wire it, because it'll be quite a quick process. So I shall catch you in about 10 or 15 seconds after the time lapse. So a couple of hours later, I've allowed it to dry, all the cork's down, I've got my points, so that's ready to go. So what I'm going to do first of all is I've got myself a steel rule, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be marking the brace points on the 3 foot by 1 foot board here, just so that I know exactly where it is. So I know we're there. As long as I know I'm over the joint work. So what I've got is myself a little Sharpie, and I'm just marking it with a black line, and then I'll do the same thing again just further down. Luckily this one is actually where the joint of the cork is, so this one isn't too bad. So what you do is just mark it, so it's a little bit, still a little bit wet, but a couple of hours later and it should pretty much dry quite nicely. So the main feature point is obviously going to be the distance from there to there. So what I'm going to do is, it's 12 inches and we are going to put the centre point there at 6 inches. So I know my data point for the centre of this crossing, because they're both identical. It means then I know both these will be identical as well. So I'm going to lay the track there. So I'm going to use the middle sleeper of the crossing as the joint, and then all I'm going to be doing now is I'm just going to check each side. So we are 4.5 there, a little bit, so it just needs to come over just a tad, just so that I know that I've got enough. So I'm 3.5 inches away from the end. You know, I could obviously then bear in mind I've got another set of points that's needed to come there, and I know the cross beam is going to be here, which you can just about see on the screen. So once I know I'm in that position, what I can now start doing is grabbing some sealing bits. So I've got myself a small little screwdriver. I'm going to get my box of hammering things out. So I've got myself a little organised tray here, which what I tend to do is I tend to have all my fish plates, insulated fish plates, my screws, nails, odd little bits and ends that I've acquired over the years. So I use the Pico pins because they are the better ones that I find that are useful, because I've got 9mm ply top, makes it quite easy to use. So what I'm going to get myself out now is get myself a small track hammer. So I've got myself a little small track hammer. I'm going to get myself a little bit of pliers or some wire cutters just in case it doesn't go in at the right point. So to lay track, I always use a drill with a drill bit in there just to pre-drill into the sleepers, because that is the most important part. And obviously get yourself a I think this one is from Expo. Get yourself a little track hammer like that and a pair of little pliers, just in case of the pen binch, you can still drill it back out, pull it back out. So for this, I know there's a screw exactly where that centre point is, so I'm going to go on either side of those. Just going to check to make sure that it looks pretty straight, which obviously is always going to be a nightmare, because you're never going to get anything straight in life, but there we go. So all I do is I'm just pre-drilling the hole one side, grabbing myself a pin, and with this one all I'm going to be doing is I'm just pinning it to just a point where it holds it in place. I'm not whacking it all the way down, and then pinning this one exactly the same. I'm not going too hard down. All I'm doing is just to hold it in place. Now, this gives me the opportunity, because obviously I'm going to be having the point motors underneath. Now that it's in place, it's a little bit flexible, so you can just lift it up. So when you then do mark the points underneath for when you need to drill, this is your perfect opportunity to get it right. Now there's two ways you can do it. What I tend to do is, still got my Sharpie, still got a pen, I just put some black or whatever colour Sharpie you've got on the bottom of one, and then I use the pair of pliers that we've got. All I do is I hold the point down, put a little bit of a pin, a little bit that side, and then just move the point over each time. And then you can see, just to make sure. And I've got two little markers there, and roughly two little markers there. Sometimes you will have to just redo it, or you can do it like a really fine drill. But I'm just going to put a little bit more on, just to make sure that we have definitely got two. Just make sure that we are on there. See what's happening. So on that point there, I've got a little bit of a lip. So all I'm doing is I'm just going to file that down. Okay. So while I'm here, I'm still going to carry on doing these, because then it saves me having to lift up, re-down, lift up, re-down. I'm sure there's other people who've got different methods and different ways of marking their point motors. I know some of my other friends, they've got all this on a template. So all they do is they mark, they draw, get the template printed off. So on the double slips, I'm using the outside of the pinhole. Doesn't really make much difference. A lot of the time I could do service mount motors, but I want it to look quite neat and quite tidy. So we've got a huge fill yard. So Gordon's Lane is going to be based on the Wessex Mainline. So you're going to be seeing South West trains in the old colours, 450s, 170s, 159s. So if you've seen my Instagram page, and obviously some bits on YouTube on how to DCC chip certain things, then that's where you'd see it from. And that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm also going to be putting a little feature in the middle with a MPV depot. So what I'm going to do now is pull off the pins, and then I'm just going to check it to one side. So I know I've got one mark there, I've got one mark there. Sometimes it is hard to spot them, but the way that I always done it is pop it back in place. Just put your pins back in. They should just fall into place, and then you kind of then get the gist of where it's going to be. This one's been a bit difficult. I don't think I've put enough on the on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill those two out first of all. So you can use different types of drills. I'm going to use a 8mm drill bit, which I believe I've got somewhere in here. I should have had this prepared ready for doing the video, but there we go. So got an 8mm drill bit. So all I'm going to be doing is just going to be drilling the hole. So this one, just take your time. And, clearing up underneath. Make sure it's nice and freely. And do the same just clear the rubbish. Now all I tend to do is just with a knife is just slowly go at an angle, just cutting round, just to make sure that the cork's not in the way, just to clear the open of the hole and make sure it's flat, so you're not going to get any debris that's going to stop the point motor from working, and you've got a big enough hole there anyway. So I use Gauge Master PM1 point motors. That's quite easy. So now I'll just pop that back in place, and then just check that the hole is in place. There we go. And then all I'm going to do is just slightly move that up, and then just check just to make sure that this does. That goes in fine there. That goes in fine there. That goes in fine there. We just check those just to make sure that they're. Now all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to mark the rails, so I know that I've got the right angle and where it's going to go. So I'll just mark the outer two on these ones, because I will have another set of points coming off there. So I'm going to just do another. So this one here, all I'm going to do is just open up these with the nail pin, so I know where they are. So yeah, if there's anything that you want to know about track laying, obviously I'm going to try and cover everything in the next couple of videos. I'm just going to do a little bit of each videos on how I do stuff. So today is mainly how to get your first part of your layout up and running and working in track laying at least, and then obviously I'll go through how I do DCC. So there we go. So we've got got a couple of marks. All I'm doing is just mark there, I've got the mark there, and I've got the mark there. So there's my 4 holes for the rest of the double slip. So I'm going to move everything out of the way. Obviously just remember it's those, not your marker ones. So yeah, there's different ways you can do it, so I'm going to just carry on drilling these. Done quite a fair amount on the old on the battery, so just swap this over and stick that one on charge. So just remember, obviously, because I've got 9mm, 9mm ply underneath. It's quite crackly underneath, but as long as it's flat, it's not much of an issue. This all tends to work out quite nicely, and I will do little videos underneath and show you how I wired it all up once I'm in that ready. I'm just clearing the little bits of the wood out of the way, just to make sure it's all nice and flat. And any sharp objects, I'm not going to cut myself, because I've got a fair few bit, and obviously I don't want my dogs getting any splinters with the wood that I've just cut. So, pop that in the bin. So I'm just going to cut round the just thin layer of cork, just remove that, just to make sure that we're sometimes we get the old sawdust creeps in underneath. There we go. So if we lay our track over it, so we've got our 2 holes there, we've got our hole on that one, our hole on that one, we've got a hole on that one, and we've got a hole on that one. So now we can fix this permanently down in the right place. So we'll just make sure we're lined up in all the areas where we've marked. You can remove the screws, or you can do it different ways. You can glue the track down, but I've always done it in this method. Just check again just to make sure. And there we'll just draw on the end of the point. Done. And then finally the last pin at the front. Make sure they move. And then all I'm going to do is, these have already got some pinholes in, so I'm just going to open this one up just to make sure this one's going to be alright. And exactly the same in the same sleepers here and here. On the main layout, when I do a main layout, what I tend to do is I tend to paint the cork a brown colour, because then it acts like earth, So if you do see any ballasting or that's missing, it looks like earth underneath. So and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do what I always do, just put one in the centre of the double slip, because sometimes they have a tendency to bow up. So just make sure that the track is absolutely flat. And it's always fine, always before you start a layout, always try to plan it as much as possible. There we go. So hopefully this is going to be the first part of the layout, which will be the data point. Now I'll have to do exactly the same thing again, but on the opposite end, but as a mirror image eventually. But for the time being, this is going to be the main data point going that way, and then once I get enough legs, I've got some more legs being built at the moment, so once I've got that all done, then I'll be able to put it side by side and make sure that I've got this is exactly the same distance going forward, because they're both identical, so they should sit in exactly the same space down that end as a mirror. So all I'm going to do is on this one is I'm just going to find a point. I'm going to do just here, I think, on the point, because I can just see it bowing up a little bit. But it's totally up to you how many nails and that you put in. And I'm going to do one on the opposite side as well, just to pop these in place. So you can pick up your Pico screws from any retailer, and now that seems quite flat. There's no raised bits and everything else. So because I'm doing DCC, I'm using Insel Frog points. Now I could use Electro Frog, but I don't. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what I do to improve the reliability of the points. Is underneath the points here you can already see that there is two gaps there to solder or wire up or cut out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go over to the station, and then I'll show you what I'm going to be doing just to improve these a little bit, so you're not relying on the switchblade for the contact for the electricity. So join me over there. Right, so we're at the workstation now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how I do this, so you can get the understanding of how it's done. There's two ways you can do this. You can get yourself some wire, strip it, solder it and do that way. Or what you can do is you can do a whole cross like that, wire stripper, solder it on in place, and then just cut out the in-between section. But what I tend to do is I tend to do it section by section. So all I'm going to do is just get myself some wire strippers, or use whatever you've got, what you normally use to cut wires. I tend to use a pair of wire cutters, or different pair of pliers sometimes does it. So as you can see there, all I've done is just strip the wire off just a tiny little bit, just twist the wire. I've got my soldering over here, so just going to get the solder out, and then all I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to tin the wire, so just so that it's all nice and tinned. So what I'm going to do now is, I know I'm going to need to solder onto there, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solder up these joints first, so it just means then the wire is ready to go on. So I'm just going to start off with the one furthest away, because obviously it's easier, so we know it's going to hot. There we go. And there we go. So you can just see that I've just put 4 little blobs of solder on. And now all I'm going to do is just gently solder on there, pop the iron on there, and there we go. And now that is done, and then all I'm going to do is just repeat that on both sides. So I'm going to find myself my small pair of wire cutters, which are just on the layout. We were using them as part of the to hold the pins in place. So all I'm going to do is just pull the wire up, cut it, and just make it a little bit neat. You're not going to see much. You're not going to see it anyway. And that's what I've done there, as you can see. And I'll repeat that on the other side now, and then I will stop videoing, do the others, and then I'll take you back to the layout. It just gives you that reliability. The same thing, I always do this on electro frog points as well. So that just improves the reliability, so you're not relying on the switchblade to do all the powering over the layout. And there we go. So that's one done. So now that takes the advantage in for the point work, that you've now got a double feed to that regardless of the switchblade. So that basically means that rail will now feed that regardless if it's closed or open, and vice versa. So what I'll do is I'll do it to that one there, and then I will take you back to the layout. I'll lay these 2 points down, and then you can then see how far I've gone, what I'll get up to tonight. I don't want to make this video too long. Just gives you a little snapshot of how to first start your layout. Welcome back. So what I've done now is I've done all the point work. Just bear one second, I've just got to let the dog in. Quite intrusive, he's just down there. So I'll meet you to one of my little dogs. There's Charlie. He always likes to come and see what I'm doing now and again, because obviously he knows that I'm quite busy in here. So what I'm going to do is I've done the points now. I've wired them all up. They're ready to go. So move the drill out of the way because you don't want to see that. Move that out of the way for a second. So same thing again here is we know that we've got our joint. Yeah, let's move that out of the way so you've got a better view. So I've got my left and I've got my right hand point, so they're going to be going on here and here. So I've done the underneath part, so what I need to do is grab myself 2 electric fish plates, so normal standard fish plates. I'm just going to pop these on, and pop this on that side, and then just feed it onto the rail, and it's quite tight, so just going to make sure that it's in there. It's in pretty straight, and then I'm going to use the drill just to mark the holes, and then just take those out, and I can see that it's in the right place, so I know I've got plenty of space. I'm not going to miss the joint. I'll leave that to one side and do the other side at the same time. Good. Oh, you can probably hear one of my other dogs barking. And then I'm going to do exactly the same again. Is just drill the holes through where the point motor is going to be, remove the point, mark it with a Sharpie, and then I know that those 2 are my areas where the points need to go, where the holes need to go for the point motors. So same thing again, just going to drill through very slowly. That's one done. done. Just going to make sure that there's no bits that, there we go, get rid of that, because I don't want my dogs getting any splinters again. And you can see it's wobbling around a little bit. That's normal because obviously it's only 1 foot wide. Once the layout is all up, or further bit of it or curves round, it tends to balance itself out. So all I'm going to do now is slide the motors, the rails back into the fish plates. Just check the hole's fine, which it is. Just clear it because I can see a little bit more strands in the way. And then pop in the other side, just check that, and that seems a bit tight on that edge. So all I'm going to do is just get the knife and just a little bit of a drill just to catch a little bit of it. Just make sure the point works out of the when it's not glued down, and obviously there we go. And then now all I tend to do is I tend to hold it, push the rails right up, because I don't tend to put any expansion points in here, because obviously I'm building it in a log cabin in the garden. It's at a pretty decent temperature, you know it's not all going to move. What I tend to do is I tend to leave a little bit of a expansion gap, because sometimes when you go to a show during the summer, which is obviously very rare, the expansion jack joins up, so sometimes you can get a bit of track buckle, which, believe it or not, I've had many times when I was an engineer for Network Rail. We had some track buckling outside of Waterloo, which was quite scary actually, because a train actually gone over it, but and then obviously the line was then shut afterwards. So same thing again, make sure the rails is all down, and there we go. So yeah, that's improved the wiring there, to come through here. The double slips you can't really do that with. I probably could have done it with here, but obviously it means then me cutting out underneath, probably just there and there to do that. So I may do that on the other end, but as that's now in, there's no point me lifting that to do it. But then you can also put extra feeds in if you really want to. But obviously I'm going to have feeds in here anyway, and I'm going to have feeds in that way. So what I tend to do is when I wire up the layout, I tend to have feeds at each end of the baseboard with wires going connecting, so you've got feed, so if one end does break, you know you've still got feed across the layout. So what I might do now is, as I've done this far, I might actually start laying some flexi-track along there so you can actually see a little bit further. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slowly go back down, move you down, so you can see more of the layout. So the fiddle yard is going to be roughly around about, what's it for, 8, 12, 16. So you're roughly looking around about 22 foot long for the fiddle yard. But obviously the advantage of what I've done here is it's 11 foot fiddle yard at each end, if it was an end-to-end layout. But if it's going to be an oval layout, you've got a 22 foot fiddle yard. So yeah, that's that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab myself 2 bits of flexi track that I had earlier. Grab here. So I'm using Pico Code 100, and then what I'm going to do is obviously I'm going to start off with the centre lines, because they're going to be my data point. So all I'm going to do is I use a track setter, which is this one here, and then I will now show you roughly how I start laying the track work. Just get rid of that wire. Don't need anything else. So for laying track for Pico Code 100, you're going to need yourself a knife on this one, your track setter, your hammer again, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you. So with obviously laying flexi track, obviously it is a bit of an art. What I'm going to do here is the first sleeper. All I'm going to do is get the knife, just be careful because of your hands, and then all I'm doing is I'm just going to cut the chair away. So what this allows is it just makes it flat and quite nice and neat. So then when you then put the fish plates on, you don't have the gap in between. In between. So what I'm going to do is just show you. So you should be able to just pull the track down there, and you can see it's nice and flat. There is no chair. So I'm going to get myself 2 fish plates. What I tend to do is I tend to put the fish plates on the point work, because the point work only goes so far, as whereas you put them on the flexi track, they go shooting straight up. So you're going to use more of the fish plate on the flexi track than you will do on the points. When you do get to laying it between flexi and flexi track, which I should be able to show you doing, it's quite easy. So all I know is here, I now know that the sleepers are going to start catching on that side. So this is why you've got your pair of cutters. So the first one, I always tend to cut right close to the edge of where the rail is, and then I just work out a little bit, and I just do each one. I do roughly around about 3 sleeper cuts, and then push the rails into the fish plates, and then I just start moving the rail up underneath. There we go. So you can see just having a, there we go. And then now what I tend to use my setter, and what I tend to do, put the setter on the back of the point, because the back of the point is going to be straight, we hope. And then the first pin I always do between the last loophole of the track setter, and I just pin it down so it's not completely fixed, and then just down here, which I'll bring you down to, just bring you down, just down here you'll see that I can't fling the point over. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm just going to have to cut the bit of a sleeper away, and hopefully that's enough. So you can cut it just before the chair, so you know you're still going to have enough space for that to come out. So hopefully that looks pretty smooth. And now what I tend to do is put the middle of the track setter in the middle, and then go into the first hoop, and then just pop a pin in there, and then all I do now, because I know that's straight, I tend to put a pin in the second sleeper back, which has got the chair fitted to it, and then that just holds it in place. And then then I repeat the setting of the track. So I'll pop the one down now, and then I know that's pretty straight, because obviously I've got that there, and then all I tend to do is we know that that's now straight. So even if you did, so now what I tend to do is put the middle in there again, and then we know that we're going to get a straight line, or a straightish line, for laying the track. And do that one down, and then it's just basically repeating the pinning. So what I'm going to do is do a couple more, and then I'm going to show you other little things that I need to do. Obviously this is going to be an interesting one, and obviously you can move the sleeper around so it does look a little bit, so you've got enough space in, and some people cut underneath. Just here just out of the screen. So just here there is an actual baseboard joint, so which is just about there. So what this is going to be an interesting thing is obviously I need to obviously make a cut down there, but I don't want to do that yet until I'm physically ready, until I've laid all the track across. And what I tend to do is between as I cut out the 2 sleepers each side, put the screws in, and then do the joint, but I shall do that on another video. So that is basically how I start laying track. You see there, you can get a little bit of flexy in the joint, so you can put another, go halfway between each one and then put another one down, but as this is the fiddle yard, I'm not too really fussed with that. So I'm going to leave you there. I hope you've enjoyed the first part of what Gordon Lane is going to be like, and I hope to bring you some more updates very soon on the rest of the layout, and once I've got the panels built, I'll be able to go for a little bit of detail of how the root setting is going to work on them, and then hopefully I'll show you how I'm going to wire these up, and see what it's like to actually build an exhibition layout with various different features that I tend to use, and obviously then hopefully one day you may see it in the flesh, or you may actually get to see the full length video from start to finish. So thank you very much for watching. I hope it's not been too much waste of your time and you've learned a little bit. Please remember to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and I shall see you on the next video. Thank you very much. Bye bye.